My name is Mark Cosgrove. I'm a cinema curator here at Watershed, and delighted to welcome you to this special event as part of Filmic. Filmic is a strand of programming that we've been doing which looks at the creative connections across film, moving image and music. We've been doing it in partnership with St George's, and absolutely delighted to welcome Jocelyn Pook to be with us today. Jocelyn, as I'm sure people will know, is an award-winning musician and has collaborated with a range of different art forms, from theatre to dance, ballet, but is here to talk to us about her collaborations with filmmakers. And Jocelyn did a performance last night at St George's, which was absolutely fantastic. It was great to hear the work performed live. Welcome, Jocelyn.
Thank you.
And there'll be opportunity for people to ask questions, I'm sure. But I just threw Jocelyn the googly just as we were standing at the back there waiting, which was I'm always interested. What was the sort of first thing that for musicians? What was the first thing that comes to mind in terms of watching either film or television that they remember in terms of the music? So I just wonder if we revisit that answer.
I think you were hoping for, you were talking more about film, but the thing that came to my mind was the TV programmes I saw as a child, that were really, really, the music was really rich, that I remember anyway, that like Robinson Crusoe and...
See, there was an acknowledgement from somewhere. Yeah, there's an acknowledgement of that.
I can still sing those themes. It's just they're so memorable. They're beautiful, and Belle and Sebastian, and there was just so much good music and melody around that time. And it was the time of I guess the Beatles, and I grew up singing all that kind of stuff, and those things were very influential, and the singing Ringing Tree.
But because I remember, because when you said it, I went, oh yeah, of course, because I remember that from my childhood, watching them on television, and it was that they were very distinctive, not just visually, but the audio side of it. I mean, singing Ringing Tree in particular, I remember not necessarily just the music, but also the sounds, the texture.
Were very magical, but the thing about, I think there was just a real strong melody in a lot of the children's programs. I mean, there was, it felt like a really rich era actually and that's why actually so many of them are available on DVD now, because they were so good. There were so many really fantastic programs then. Well, maybe there are now, I don't know.
But in with film, you did mention 2001.
Yeah, actually, that I think I was like a teenager or something then, and that really did have a strong effect on me. I mean, it was really powerful. I didn't really understand the film that much when I first saw it, but it was really powerful in the way in its bold use of music, and it was that really had it was a very memorable experience. That when I first saw that film.
And of course, you went on to work with Kubrick, and we'll talk about that later on. But one of the things that when I found out that Jocelyn was playing at St George's, was and that we'd do this conversation, was I asked her to put together a selection of films that have influenced or inspired her, and that we screened them in March if people managed to see them, which was Dancing in the Dark, the Lars von Trier with Björk. Where it's like a typical Lars von Trier, slightly demented musical in some shape or form. The Double Life of Veronique, Great Beauty, 2001, with the films. What was it, revisiting those films? What was it that what sort of?
I mean, with the Björk, the Lars von Trier. The musically, I just thought it was really innovative. Actually, I thought the way she I had to say it was a long time ago that I saw it, and I meant to watch them again before coming here, but I didn't have time. But I remember the scene in the factory, and the way she used a kind of, the kind of found sounds. And possibly a train scene as well, and she kind of used those in the music, incorporated, found sounds in the music, and and drove the music with some of those. And I just thought the way it was knitted together and with the vocal side of it, I just remember it. I thought it was brilliant. I thought it should be. Oh, and the other one I'm just remembering. I was going to say I thought it should have been nominated for an Oscar, and I also thought that cartoon film, animated film, Belleville Rendezvous.
Oh yeah,
which I thought was brilliant. It was nominated for an Oscar, but should have won.
Yeah, but they are. I mean, it's like you're saying, it's audacious, like the 2001. I mean, there's an audacious approach in Dance in the Dark to the use of music and singing, and
Yes. I mean, I think it's also. I think also that the fact that I guess in some of those films anyway, that the source is, there's a kind of rationale for the source. The music's it's kind of more organically part of the film, And in Belleville Rendezvous, you've got those. I don't know if people have seen that film, but you've got those old ladies with the doing their cooking and all the sounds of the or vacuum cleaner. I can't remember, the domestic sounds are kind of become part of the musical score, and it's just so uplifting actually, and brilliantly knitted together, and the kind of it's just quite. I just found that quite exciting and exhilarating, and it gets away from the sort of humdrum use of music that is in the kind of Hollywood sort of underscoring and kind of.
Which almost feels as though it's meant to poke an emotion at a certain point.
That
kind of music.
Manipulative. But I don't know. It's just that the music's there for a reason, and it's kind of grown out of it, and it just I kind of get more excited. What was the other film?
With the Double Life of Veronique, the Krzysztof Kieslowski film that we've got a clip from. We can have a look, but. Because that when you mentioned that, I mean, it always struck me as an incredible. I mean, Kieslowski in his later years was incredibly powerful use of music that he has.
And again, it's music's there for a reason as well. It's kind of, there's obviously underscore, but it's kind of coming out of the fact that there's these twins, and one of them's a singer. It was a long time ago I saw it, but it had such an effect on me at the time when I saw it, when it just came out. Really, I think it was really innovative of its time, and the singer was so I can't remember when you found out she was a singer, but the score of it was all revolving around this one piece that she sang in the performance. At least that's what I remember.
Well, we'll have a look at it. I mean, it is that if people remember or don't know, it's Irene Jacob, French actress, plays. The Veronique in Warsaw in Poland, who's in a choir, and she feels that there's something else going on in her life, but she sees herself, or somebody that looks exactly like her, who is indeed Irene Jacob, played by her, who there's a parallel story of a French woman who's a teacher, and Kieslowski plays between. You're never quite sure, but he plays between those two. But this is a scene.
Well, they're twins that were separated.
Well, I'm never quite sure whether it actually says that. Absolutely. Perhaps somebody in the audience can say. Anyway, well, let's have a look at it. This section early on, which is that's sense that. Well, what you said about the music coming from a place within the film, it's actually part of the.
But you don't discover that until later, I think, and then that. Anyway.
Yeah. Let's have a look. It's a very powerful piece. What sort of thoughts go through your mind when you're just seeing it there just now?
Well, I mean, the music was very emotive, and it was that kind of emotion in the music was really very present and very foreground in so much of the film. That is what I remember from all those years ago. When did it come out? It was like in the 90s.
Early 90s, yeah.
So I mean, at the time, it was quite unusual to it was
because it is using the music. So that performance is something that's in the story. That's happening. These people are, but he's saying that there's something else going on. But the music's also seems to be doing that. As well.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean,
One of the other films is a more recent film, The Great Beauty, which is a fantastic hit just last year.
Yeah.
Again, what was it about that?
Oh, but, I mean, it's just such a great film. I just wanted to see it again as soon as I saw it. It's just so it wasn't just the music, but also I have to admit that I hadn't been because since I became a mother about 6 years ago, I hadn't been out as much to the cinema. That's one thing that goes, when you and so it was a rare visit to the cinema. I actually saw The Great Beauty in the cinema, and it just was so it was. Whereas I'm always seeing DVDs at home, and it's just not the same at all. And so it's just like fantastic experience, like again, the music's very kind of foreground, very bold, and there's often a reason. It's often the source of it. It's often kind of knitted into kind of a scene of the film. It's just really powerful. I mean, the music he's chosen as well is brilliant. I thought brilliant choices and. And very varied. And
well, let's have a look. We'll have a look at the beginning of it. I think you get a sense of that, the variation, the quite extremes that he uses. So we'll have a quick look at The Great Beauty.
Okay. Oh, ma hai veramente rotto il cazzo.
Bracciano kokarana garete kitaimasu. Mata. Kyoko wa sono kohoni shokubutsu no heizetsushi.
Yeah. You've just gone from this beautiful choral piece, and then it's the nightclub.
to the death of a sightseer.
Yeah. From the death of a sightseer to the death of Italian culture, I think, is what happened. Yeah. But it's what was brilliant about that film as well, because we screened it here, and I remember seeing it at a festival. Was it's just that boldness of the use of music, where so he doesn't have to explain that the people standing up there singing, why they're there or what, but uses that as a very theatrical device in the film.
Yes, It's. I'm trying to remember the other set. There was so much of it as well. There were so many different and so much rich music in there, and I'm trying to cast my mind back. But it's just it's fantastic.
No, it is an extraordinary film. Do recommend if people haven't seen it to see it again. But so moving on to your own, working with filmmakers. I mean, most famously, it was the phone call from Stanley Kubrick. And the music, your music was used in Eyes Wide Shut, his last film. So how did that come about?
Well, out of the blue, really.
Yeah.
And I hadn't done any film work then. It was chance that he heard my music. It was on a CD, and a choreographer that. In fact, funnily enough, he saw the choreographer on a late night dance on camera. We were talking about the time when there were these kind of interesting collaborations between the Arts Council and the BBC, and there was a dance on camera late night that he saw, and he saw this choreographer, Yolanda Snaith, who then worked on the scene in the film that needed choreography, and she had my CD, and she happened to be playing it as he walked into a rehearsal that she had.
Right.
So it was very chance.
Yeah.
And literally that day he called me to ask me about that music and about whether I had any other music like that. And then after he called me, literally 2 hours later, a car arrived for a little cassette that I made of my music. and took away my cassette.
So 2001: A Space Odyssey has had this big effect on you, and you know, it is an extraordinary epic film. And Kubrick's got this reputation. You know, he's done Clockwork Orange and Controversy and The Shite. I mean, he's amazing, and he calls you up.
Well, I had to admit, if it hadn't been, I was warned by his assistant.
Right.
Otherwise, I would have thought it was a friend playing a joke. You
Right.
know, I would have definitely, yeah. So it was a bit. So it
So
was.
you were alerted to.
I was, yeah, by his assistant. So it was, you know, it wasn't quite as out of the blue, but then he did call, you know, minutes later, and I was on the other line. And I had to put him on hold, which people can't believe that I did.
Yeah.
And he was still there when I came back, you know.
Right.
And then
And what? So did he use that piece of music, or did he want you to? And again, we'll have a look at the sequence, famous.
Well, what
sequence
happened was
that
he was first of all thinking of that particular scene and that particular music he'd heard. We had a conversation later that day, I think, and then. The next day, the car came back for me,
Right.
the same car, and I drove up to Pinewood Studios.
Yeah.
And it was delightful, you know. He was like really lovely and so enthusiastic about music and anything to do with music. So he was, and so he asked if I would write music for this scene, which involved about 3 different pieces of music originally, and. But it hadn't been shot. It was way before they shot it.
Right.
So he just described it to me, showed me some pictures, wouldn't give me the script, but showed me pictures, and actually, because it was a self-contained scene, it was possible to work like that. Later, much later, when I was asked to do the rest of the original music for the film, I wasn't allowed to have the film, the script, or the film, because by then they'd edited it, a version, and it was impossible. I realised that was a really interesting exercise to try and. But not really understand, you know, each scene in isolation, not really understand how weighted certain things were by, you know, not understanding, not knowing the context. It was a really good exercise in film music writing for me, because I realised you just have to, you know, immerse yourself in the whole ideas of the film and the whole concept and, you know, and have context. And except occasionally, you know, like I started with this one scene, which was almost like a world in its own, that masked ball scene. So it was possible to do that, but the rest of the film... So in the end, they gave in, and they let me have the film. I can't remember now. They were going to take it back each day, because there was all this secrecy around, you know. Yeah. And I didn't have the script ever, but I had and they did in the end. They did let me have it at my house, but you know, it was incredibly.
This was a pre-digital era as well. I imagine.
I guess it was. Yeah, it was a big old video, and But so I started working like that, and I did lots of sketches and lots of toing and fro. He was very open. He said, you know, I'm not sure what's right. You know, he was just normal, like a normal. The way of working, you're both sort of feeling your way. What's the right thing for this? You know, at one point he said, I want it really choral, and then he changed his mind, and you know, but he just wanted me to play.
Had anything been shot at that point?
No,
when he was talking about the choral side of it, nothing had been shot.
No.
Yeah.
And then it was difficult with the second scene of that. You know, there's the masked ball scene, and then there's the orgy scene.
Yeah.
And the orgy scene was really, it became more stylised than it originally was going to be, but it was an odd brief, because he didn't know what was going to be right. He just said, I do not know, have a clue what the right sort of music is. I just don't know. And he just said, but sexy music.
Yeah,
It's like how, and I did this really
in the
weird
eye of,
piece
in the
for
ear of
that,
the beholder. Yeah.
And the piece I did for that actually wasn't used. It became a really important piece for me.
Yeah.
I never used it in the film, but actually it was used in Gangs of New York, which was really
right,
nice.
okay.
And it was on my album and everything. So everything kind of, all these sketches you do, they never get wasted, you know. But then he ended up actually finding a found piece for that was my music, but I didn't write specially for the film.
Right.
But yeah.
Well, let's have a look at it. So it's the mass ball scene. Have people seen Eyes Wide Shut? Lots of people have. So it's Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman, and Tom Cruise is sort of being drawn into a kind of sexual underworld that's about to cause all sorts of tensions in terms of the relationship. There's only so far I think we'll go with it, as it's 3 o'clock on Saturday afternoon. But we'll show. So he's just arriving at the big house for the masked ball. So we'll have a look at a few minutes of that. So what, with that music that was being played there, was that was him talking to you about, I wanted to sound like this, or was that then something that was you'd already done?
Well, it was based on something I'd already done, yeah. I kind of reworked it. I mean, it's basically the thing he originally heard, that which was on my album, but I kind of reworked it for the film in the end, yeah. I mean, originally it had a long journey that came out of a sketch that I did. I mean, because we've been talking about collaborations before this talk, and you know that how that kind of takes one in unexpected directions. And originally, I was working with Deviate Physical Theatre and on a piece about homosexuality, but I'm just prejudice and. It came out of stuff to do with that piece, which was never used for that piece in the end. But the idea of playing with this backwards priest, a priest that I've reversed, a Romanian priest, and the singing and that kind of.
Is that what the vocal is?
Yes.
Is it an original priest?
Yes.
And you've reversed it.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, I've done a lot of work with backwards vocals. Melanie sang some last night.
Yeah. Because it's a fantastically powerful effect.
Well, it has this kind of eerie strangeness that I like.
And the banging, the guy banging, was that something that was...
no, that's just...
No, I know it's separate, but it was something that then Kubrick's wanted to fit that in with the music.
They shot this to the music. So
right.
I didn't know that until I actually met Tom Cruise and he told me that, and I said, "Oh, you must have got." No, maybe I knew that before. Anyway, that was my one thing that I talked about with Tom Cruise, and he said, and I said, "You must have got sick of it, you know, because he shot it. You know, he was renownedly perfectionist and in many, many, many takes, days of takes, I think. And so I just said, it must have driven you mad.
With that music playing, is right.
He was very nice about it, but you know, it must have, But the idea again, it was also it was sort of going to be music and vision. You know, you can see the guy playing the keyboard. That's the story, is that the musician is producing this music, and in a way, it's kind of became fantasy, because obviously it's sort of more than just a keyboard. But anyway, that's kind of. But just went.
With sort of moving on to the collaboration with the filmmaker artist John Smith, because I was sort of part joking with you but part serious earlier on, is that you've worked with two very exacting filmmakers, Stanley Kubrick and John Smith, whose attention to detail is absolute. Both of them are absolute in terms of their attention to detail. So you want to just, because we'll have a look at Blight, which is John's and Jocelyn's collaboration. We'll have a look at it, but do you want to just set it up and how that came about?
Right. Well, it came about. I mean, I there was this opportunity with this thing called Sound on Film, which BBC and Arts Council wanted a composer and a filmmaker to collaborate to make a music film, and John was a filmmaker that I knew. We both lived in Leytonstone, and we lived there because it was going to be the houses were going to be knocked down by a motorway that needed to be built, and the M11 Link Road, and we. But we were very fortunate to have had short life housing, very cheap, and made it possible to be artists. So actually, we did very well out of this motorway in a sense. But it did just sort of destroy a community, and that there had been people there who, had it was very painful that had lived there all their lives, and it was a very hard time, and it was a time of swampy and kind of when the first road protests happened actually, and we'd always felt a little bit sheepish because we kind of continued doing our thing, and actually as the bulldozers they started knocking down the houses around us, we were kind of there till the bitter end, and I remember waking up one morning and opening my curtain, and because the house next door had been knocked down already, and on the bulldozer were all these protesters, just kind of, and probably they did amazing things, and they were concreting themselves into houses to try and stop what was happening. And I guess what our film became in a way our kind of contribution to a kind of. Say a protest, but it's a kind of it was a film about that whole time and that whole place and what happened, and again we didn't really know what it was going to be when we first.
John, famously, hasn't worked with musicians or any. He's very, there's no music that John. I mean, there is.
He's never, he never works with music, so I knew that working with him would mean that the music had a place, so it had an importance, and that it kind of had a reason. Even having said that, we still didn't know what we were going to do, and we in our proposal, I think we were talking of choirs, and I think I was probably influenced by the Double Life of Veronique, and thinking of, we were talking about very imposed music, and actually in the end it did become something very unexpected that the way that it developed and the music grew out of, and some of the images grew out of musical ideas, which was nice.
Well, let's have a look at it.
Kill the spiders. Nah, they won't hurt you, they won't hurt you.
So at what point did it come into focus, what shape it was going to be? You said that, there was a scheme there, you applied for it, you're thinking about various things. At what point? Because it feels so very tightly structured.
No, well, it went through a lot of different phases, but I think there's always certain givens, like particularly with John's way of working. I mean, he always tends to use found images that he then plays with, and kind of narratives kind of come through found images that he plays a lot with that, and he was already busy kind of shooting what was going on, because obviously it was well underway when we started the film, the kind of I mean a lot of Leytonstone, a lot of the houses had been demolished. I mean he was filming even before we applied, I think, just the process and the demolitions, and then there was corrugated iron everywhere, all over Leytonstone. Suddenly there were all these corrugated iron fences, and the very first thing we did actually was go out with a sound recorder and drag a stick across, record the sounds of a stick across corrugated iron, which we didn't know, we were just messing around, But again, that kind of became the corrugated iron tango piece, But much later on, it sort of it got used, and it was you never know, you just kind of mess around.
And what about the very distinctive the voices?
That kind of again happened by chance in that there was a documentary about the making of about what was going on at the time, where that woman who was singing the Jordan and Kim, and I was very taken with that little fragment, and was messing around with that, actually doing some sketches around, because we knew the woman that normally she swears at her kids, but because she was being filmed for a documentary, she was kind of calling them quite politely. Anyway, but you know, I was just happened to be playing with that bit of sound, because I guess the way of John's, I mean, found myself playing with some found sounds and of things I was recording as well, walking around Leytonstone. And it just, I think we hit upon the idea, because he quite liked that's right, the tango actually came out of that Jordan and Kim, in a way. It kind of grew from that. I started playing with this idea, and then John got really, you know, that's what inspired the idea of interviewing residents about what they remembered, particularly, you know, the people that lots of people have been born there that we knew, you know. But John had lived there for 20 years. It was supposed to be short life housing, but he was there for about 20 odd years. I was there for about 10. So we started, again, not knowing kind of whether we'd use the material, but then the Jan who talks of remembering killing the spiders in the toilet, and she's the one that has this very sing-songy voice, and that kind of struck me when she was going, I don't really remember which, you know, so lots of these kind of, I guess I was, in that sense, mirroring the way John works with his film, perhaps being inspired by that, you know, the way he plays with found images, and I found myself playing with some found, and also it was very inspiring material, the kind of, and very poignant, the memories and the voices, the richness of the voices, and the every voice is, you know, I mean, I'm quite fascinated by voices and the way they're like an instant kind of oral photo, you know, of you hear somebody on the phone, you instantly know who it is, you know, and just that complexity and richness in a voice. I just really enjoyed working. It's the first time I started really. Really getting interested in voice and working with spoken voice.
And which is something that's continued to inform your music practice.
Yeah. It's the first time I came upon that in this film, and that kind of I kind of continued to in certain pieces of being played and drawing upon the musicality, that, you know, innate musicality, and particularly in certain voices, modern, you know, that it's something I'm really interested in. But yeah, it was a really fantastic journey, this piece, because it kind of went a totally its own way, you know. It sort of was...
Well, it's one of the most award-winning short films I've certainly come across, and when it went around the film festival circuit, I mean, it won, I don't know, like 12, 13, 14 awards.
Yeah,
you know,
I don't know.
At lots of different festivals, and it was a huge success, because it had such a impact in many different ways.
Yeah, it was nice.
I was trying to describe your music to someone, and I suppose when you're trying to make a Spanish salad, it's the quality of the individual ingredients that counts, rather than a curry where you're trying to get a blend of spices. And I was just trying to describe what I thought your focus was, but I'd be interested to hear. How would you describe it?
It's very hard to describe one's own music, and I like the Spanish salad. I never thought that. But, I mean, I think lots of the music last night was very, I mean, it's all very much focusing on the voice, most of it, I would say, and in kind of... but there was a mixture of choral and when you said, I mean, and also very much inspired by voice, you know, particular kind of different vocal techniques. And often in my ensemble, I've got an Indian singer who wasn't available because he's just had a baby, and a Persian singer who's, Iranian singer who's not very well. And so, but I had the Macedonian singer who had that kind of, but she was also trying to do. She was being a chameleon and actually covering for the Indian and Iranian singer as well. So, but she, a lot of the music's been inspired by different vocal techniques and different ways of producing. I'm always fascinated by the voice and the Iranian it's like yodeling. It's called tahir, which I kind of sometimes have come across samples perhaps of. Little extracts of. I've got this. It's like my Bible. It's like Voices of the World, and it's like field recordings from all over the world, from tribal music to Georgian, all sorts of people. It's just everything to do with the voice.
I first came across your gorgeous music watching Deviate Strange Fish.
Oh, right.
Yeah, what I'm really interested in is just, if you wouldn't mind talking a bit more about that process and how much of that was a collaboration, or is it a kind of a call and response? Are you responding to the choreography, to Lloyd Newson's ideas, and then does that then feed back into the process? And also, how different is that than when you're working with film? And I'm guessing that's incredibly different, when you're working with different directors. But what are the noticeable differences for you?
Yes.
As a process?
The kind of collaborative, the involvement with, say, Deviate, but also with John's, where you're there from right from the start, is quite unusual in film anyway. But often with film, you're brought in fairly near the end of the process. So I would say that's, it isn't always the case, but it's very much more often the case. But it's really, I came from a background in a way of working in experimental theatre, so I was familiar with, more as a musician, I was, and then gradually more as a composer. So I witnessed those kind of processes, really, collaborative ways of working, and how I was working in devised theatre a lot with Impact Theatre and Lumiere and Sun, and that really, so it gave me a lot of idea about that kind of those witnessing those kind of processes, and look, it's a great. It was working on Deviate. Yeah, it was a great sort of. I was going to say it wasn't exactly a pleasure, but it was really stimulating and inspiring working with Lloyd. He's one of the most difficult people to work with. It was fantastically inspiring, and Melanie was in Strange Fish as well, and she's also a singer. We go way back and work very collaboratively together as well. For that work, for instance, during Strange Fish, we were very inspired. Well, I was very inspired by Time of the Gypsies. That film had just come out, and actually that should have been one of my choices, because the soundtrack for that film was, again of that time. It was really special, and there's one point where there's a lot of, I guess it's really Balkan folk music, which Bregovic has arranged, but it's very powerful. Both the arrangements and the actual music and the singing. Again, there's this kind of strangeness to some of the singing, and we were very inspired by that. And actually, that really there's certain sections in Strange Fish that we were almost we were playing with imitating this old lady who was in the Time of the Gypsies. More recently with Akram Khan, I've done 3 pieces with him more recently, and very very much. It's very enjoyable, that kind of. It is a very to and fro, and it's nice to feel that you're throwing out kind of ideas that are influencing the whole piece as well. It's really it's satisfying, and and it's really that's definitely was the case with Strange Fish. So of course, sometimes I'm responding to choreographic ideas, or with Lloyd, it's there's lots to respond to, because he's such a everything. What I love about his work as well is that everything's there for a reason. It's not about patterns, and it's really meaty stuff, and just there's plenty of ideas as well of just movement to respond to. So there was so much. I remember that there was so much layers to that piece that. And there's different sections, you know. Lloyd would throw out an idea that there was all the sections with Melanie on the cross, and so it was very much a toing and froing, and I'm throwing out ideas in response to his, and that's how it kind of works. And with Akram, just to continue on that, I don't know if anyone's seen Desh, but it's a shame because it's still kind of going, but it's been around for 3 years, so I don't know if it'll come back much. But it was a one-man show that he did, but it's a really quite extraordinary piece. Well, anyway, if you'd seen it, it's probably more interesting. But the music, there's one section which is we'd been to Bangladesh to research the piece, actually, which was a lovely beginning to a project. The whole creative team were taken to Bangladesh, which doesn't usually happen, and I did lots of field recordings while we were just going around, and then I kind of I was playing with some of this stuff, and there were lots of. I mean, Dakar is just mad. It's jangling, crazy. I mean, it's the craziest place I've ever been. You know, the car. You know, the cars, the noise, the piles on bikes, and the labour everywhere, and we went, and so I had lots of very percussive noises from all over the city, the shipyard and everything, and I was playing with this quite a percussive piece built from these sounds, and that really created a huge amount of material for the piece that sent Akram off into a totally particular area, which was really, really nice that. To happen that, you know, it's just nice when things are very more to and froing, you know, which isn't always the case, you know. So different people have different ways of working, you know, and invite, they want more from you in that way. They're more open to, you know, playing in that way.
Going back to the working with filmmakers, how does that does that inform your choice of who you then work with? If people come to or approach you. You know, because when you've gone on to work with people like the French director Laurent Canté, Julio Medem, Spanish director.
Yeah.
You know, who strike me as very individual. You know, they've got a strong voice in film, and that they would seem to want to work in partnership and creative partnership. Is that what happens? Or?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think I've been quite lucky in that mostly I've been approached by people like them who want to. Who've heard my music and want my voice, you know, and want that and like to use music as a voice in their work, you know, rather than as kind of a, you know, backgroundy illustrative sort of. And
in those two examples, I mean, how do you work? Do you go and talk through the project and then write a piece and? Or are you brought in when some of the film's shot, and then you get involved at that stage?
In those two, I think I was brought in after the final edits, more or less, or near to the end. Yeah, and those two I didn't get the chance to. In Julio's second film, Room in Rome, I was brought in during the shooting, and but he's a very hands-on director. He in fact I think he edited his certainly the last film, and he plays with not, you know, it's quite unusual actually, but he you know, I'll throw out lots of ideas, and I mean, he's very, as soon as they hear something, they you know, usually have an idea whether it's going to, you know, the things get thrown out, but then he might try things in different places, and you know, he plays with it, which is not always the case, actually. But Akram's similar to that. You know, for recently we did a project with English National Ballet just a couple of months ago, and actually things were getting a little bit hairy because we had a section that wasn't working and musically, and he'd had this idea, and he realised it wasn't right, and I was thinking, oh my God, you know, we've got so little time, and you know, when it's especially with a ballet company, they're not, you know, they needed stuff to rehearse to, and well, anyway, he remembered a sketch that I'd done for a previous project, that he'd got tucked away, and which I'd completely forgotten actually. So it's certain people work like that. They're kind of they're very hands-on, and then others aren't so, and they just sort of people have very different ways of working.
What are you working on at the moment, and are there any film projects in particular that are coming up?
Actually, the one thing I haven't been doing, the last film project I did was a French film called Augustine, which was about, was it called? I think it was called, yeah. It was about a hysteric. It was a true case from the last century. Anyway, it was it came out last year. I'm completely forgetting all the names of the director. Alice, it was her first film anyway. It was an interesting film, and I just can't think of the name. It was Salpêtrière, the famous mental hospital in Paris, just outside Paris.
Right.
The predecessor of Freud is the guy involved in it's a famous case anyway.
Right. Yeah.
It was about. But no, since then I've actually been doing all sorts of other things, which is it's always nice having a variety. There's a potential film next year,
right.
So I'm just going to wait and see.
Yeah.
It's really nice. Not always doing the same thing. I feel very fortunate in that sense.
So that it allows you to sort of expand your creative approach with music. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I've been working all sorts of different mediums, including driving some of my own my own. I mean, with collaborative projects, you're in the end you're servicing, unless it's an equal project like the one with John, it's usually there's somebody who's in the driving seat that you're essentially kind of responding to. It's their vision ultimately, and but it's quite nice sometimes to drive one's own project. So I've been doing a bit more of that recently as well, and a bit of theatre, and
yeah, great.
I've got a piece about anxiety that's happening in the Wigmore Hall on the 12th of June, which I'm very anxious about because I haven't written it yet.
and what is because I'm interested that, you talked about that the Augustine, the film, the subject matter of it, and you're doing this one about anxiety, and there's also another one with mental health.
It's called Hearing Voices.
Hearing Voices, yeah. You're talking about. Is there something in that those subject matters are so distinctive? I guess.
Well, actually, that was a real coincidence about Augustine, and at the same time, I was doing this piece which was a commission from the BBC Concert Orchestra, and it was Melanie, the singer that I work with a lot. It was a song cycle, but it was about mental illness, and in particular, 3 women. Well, actually, it was straddling over a century, really, and 5 different women. One of whom was my mother, so I guess I have a connection. My great aunt was one of these unfortunate women who were incarcerated. She had a breakdown, which probably would have normally, she would have been out of hospital after a couple of months, and sort of my mum called it a menopausal breakdown, but she was in hospital for 25 years until she died. Which is the case with those at that time. There were people that were just locked away, and and she'd written an incredible sort of account in a way. It was a sort of diary of the time, particularly when she started hearing voices and trying to just make sense of what was happening to her. And it's an incredible document that was my starting point for that project, really. There's a good reason for my.
And again, those are working with voices. I mean, the vocal side of it's obviously very central.
Yeah, well, there's a kind of double thing about voices in that one. But I was working with testimony voices, interviews that I'd done with these 3 women. Bobby Baker was one, who's a performance artist, and my mum, and Julia McNamara, and who's also an artist and actress, and who I'd sort of interviewed talking about their experiences. And then there were my aunt, who'd written a diary, my great aunt rather, and also this woman who'd can't remember her name, who is famous for making Agnes, her name was, but I can't remember her second name at the moment. She made this jacket, which has become a kind of work of art. Really, it's in that collection in Germany. She was incarcerated in hospital in 1890, and she made a jacket out of torn up pieces of hospital uniform. But she was a seamstress before she'd gone there, and so she made this incredible fitted jacket, beautiful. But she'd embroidered words all over it, and over every inch of it. And it's written. These words are in this kind of cryptic language, which they're still trying to decode. And there's this amazing book called Agnes's Jacket by Gail Hornstein, which is all about that, and also about hearing voices, and it's just a hugely important book in that area. Anyway, that's.
Well, look forward to
Sorry, I've
these.
gone
No, not at all. Look forward to these projects and hearing and seeing them. So, thanks very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.